Greetings, mighty companions.
Hello, family and friends. How are you tonight? It's the day after Christmas.
Oh my God.
Days away from the first of the year and moving into a new year. 2022.
Yes, exactly. And of course, in Miracles is so amazing in that it teaches us how to have an actually new year, not just a repeat of the last year.
Right. Let's let last year go.
Yeah. Would you like to have a new year? I mean, something that's really different.
And experience something new.
Really new. Yes.
That's really what A Course in Miracles is all about. Is forgiveness, is experiencing something new.
Exactly.
We had the way that we were holding on to the story, and now heaven offers us an alternative. If we don't like the feeling that we're feeling with our story,
exactly,
we're given a choice, and that's what we can take into our new year, how to do that.
Exactly. If you feel like you've started to notice a pattern in your life and in your relationships, it's the same old relationship, same old pattern, then and you would like to do something new and better, then here's an opportunity. Here's one way to experience something truly new and better. A Course in Miracles. What was that? The tagline of a T-shirt. It was like, when all else fails, try A Course in Miracles.
Yeah, we like to come up with different T-shirts that we would like to sell here at the Miracle Center. We just haven't. It's more of a fantasy joke right now.
Yes, right. When all else fails, A Course in Miracles. That's how I came to A Course in Miracles. Everything else had failed, and I was on the floor.
On the floor.
I was on the floor, snot coming down my nose, all my makeup running on the floor. And that was because everything else had failed. If I just do that, I'll be happy. Oh, if I just do that, I'll have love. Oh, if I do that, I'll be happy. It had all failed. And I was on the ground with snot running down my nose. Not very pretty.
We had friends over, as a lot of people do during the holiday seasons, and during these past days of sitting around, eating and laughing and drinking a few drinks, the question was posed to Anna as how she came into A Course in Miracles. And it was really, I've heard the story, but it was really exciting just listening to it, for the very fact that what we try to encourage people week after week of the days that we deliver the Course is that this isn't just a reading. It's not just a follow along. It's apply these principles and these teachings, and like in Anna's case, all else failed, but she came to the Course, and you could say the Course came in her life at the right time, coincidentally, and she applied the principles. And the difference is that she literally experienced something powerful.
A completely new life.
That the other remedies couldn't bring. And that experience, once you grab it, once you have it, your life literally will never be the same. It's not because you had hands laid on you and you fell onto the floor. That could be one way to heal in that pathway. But in this pathway, it delivers the application, the principles, literally, ABC. This is
Formula.
the ingredients to the recipe. Put a little bit of this of you out of the equation, and put a little bit of this from heaven into the equation, and now let's mix the batch up and see how good
happens.
this tastes. If it doesn't come out to something that not only would be edible,
Yes.
but that we can share with everybody else and hear the same thing. This is good.
And would take you into a world that you never even dreamed possible.
No.
I mean, that's what happened, is that literally from there, my life went up like this into a world I would have never dreamed possible, up until here. We're at Villa de Angel in Mexico, teaching A Course in Miracles, surrounded by the coolest, most loving, most fun, most amazing people who also want to have real love and peace.
Right.
Yeah.
Experiencing,
Yay! And that's y'all.
Happiness.
That's y'all. That means you guys right there.
Totally.
Yes. So.
So we did something a little different today. As we sat in the hot tub innocently in our bathing suits the day after Christmas.
Like I said, a different world.
And enjoying the beautiful blue skies and sunshine of the day, as we felt prompted by Spirit to do a random number generator early.
Before
and
class.
to actually read the section and then see what revelations were brought to us in the hot tub, in the bathroom as we're getting ready for the broadcast, going, of course, and then, you know, as the revelations are flowing, the juices are going. And so now we're going to pick back up at the beginning of the course. Would you like to lead us into
Sure.
just getting into that
I would.
space of readiness?
So normally in our Sunday classes, we get in here and we do a prayer, and then we do the random number generator to see what Spirit would choose through the never random number generator. Where in the course, we did that before class to maybe save ourselves a little time. It's almost like our higher self knew we were going to be late.
Well, knew we were going to be late,
Yeah.
and knowing we're going to need every minute we can to read this
Exactly.
section, because it has so much good stuff in it.
And so we did the random number generator in the hot tub, and what it came up with was chapter 30, section 6, the cost of idols.
And if you're in the blue book, it's still chapter 30, but section 5. And it has a different title. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the name of the
Well,
title.
whatever it was, but it's just
Yeah.
section 5 of chapter 30.
Something like the end of illusions or something. I don't know. And so this section talks about the real world. Like, did y'all know there's a real world? Like, there's the ego world that we're familiar with, okay? That's the world where we're all full of guilt and fear, and we're demanding everybody twist and fit into our dream of fear. Okay, that's the ego world. And then there's the real world that we step into, where we're like, well, maybe sin isn't real. Maybe if I release myself and everybody from the belief in sin and guilt, maybe I might experience a different kind of world, and you do. And then there's what's beyond the real world, which is what the Course in Miracles calls heaven or reality. Okay, so the real world is like the borderland. It's the world in between, totally unconscious world dominated by fear and guilt, where you're just trying to get people to make you happy, but it never works, so you're always angry. Broken into by periods in which you have some fun with each other. Okay, that's the special relationship. And then the real world is where you're like, you know, maybe I will stop trying to demand that everybody twist and fit into my dream of fear and see what happens. And you experience a world of increasing joy, increasing fun, increasing freedom, increasing abundance, increasing meaning. Okay, and once you have, and it says in the real world, that's the world and the life that you're in, where you're like, oh, it's all about forgiveness. That's all why we're here, just to forgive. Forgive myself, forgive you, forgive this, forgive. The real world is the world or the life that you're in, where you realize the only purpose of the whole world is forgiveness, which means correct perception.
And that all sounds delightfully wonderful.
Which it is.
And we seem to struggle with how hard it is, but all forgiveness is just accepting, you know, God's plan, God's interpretation. That's all forgiveness is. And if we can just let go of our own interpretations and plan. We had what we call mighty companion here this morning, eating breakfast and doing the daily lesson. We just woke up with, and as we were reading, this friend of ours was describing, just coincidentally this morning, before we ever did the random number generator, that there's like two parallel worlds, you know, like a train track. And one of them's the world of the ego, where everything's fearful and frightful and lacking, and sickness and abundance.
Hard.
And we have a lot of anxiety on that path, on that trail.
That world.
And the interpretations are always hurtful, threatening. And then you have this, as she described it, a parallel world running simultaneously right next to it. But the Course is calling that the real world. And we learn, though, that, and it speaks about this in other ways in the Course, where we jump track and we skip over, and forgiveness is the way you jump track, and you go over to the other parallel side, which the Course refers to as the real world. But what I love is there's actually a dwelling place beyond that, beyond the real world. But for right now, we're going to hear tonight how the author of A Course in Miracles is just trying to get us enthusiastic enough and to understand in words how to do that flip.
That jump over
that
portal jump.
Oh, the portal jump, beautiful, over to the real world.
Yes.
And that world is a world where, can you imagine, and this is the applications of A Course in Miracles being applied, mind you, a world where everything's going perfectly right. Not made up in your head, but it really is. I'm not joking.
It's happy.
Where it really is going right. And at first, even your friends around you might begin to say, how coincidental for you. How lucky. And then you start realizing, maybe my function really is to be happy.
Maybe this is natural. Maybe this is the way it should be or could be for everybody.
Maybe a loving parent would really want their child to only be experiencing joy and happiness. That would make sense.
A whole world of it. So if you, by any chance, are experiencing a life that doesn't feel safe and doesn't feel satisfying and doesn't feel fulfilling, then this section is about to teach you how to experience a different kind of life, how to step into another world that's available in any moment for free. Any moment you can step into the real world, another life that feels safe and happy and free, and it just gets more so as you go. Okay? In the old world, the further you went along in the old life, in the old world, the scarier it got and the more limited and constricted it got. In the real world, the more you go along, the happier it becomes, the freer it becomes, the more abundant it becomes, where you're like we were today in the hot tub with our friends going, is this okay? And then, oh yes, this is natural. This is what is available for everybody. The real world, a life where you feel safe to be yourself, and everybody loves you being yourself, and they celebrate it, and it just gets happier from there.
Now,
all right, anybody up for that?
When we say,
yeah, so, all right. And she just what she's saying.
And when we say this is for everybody, that doesn't mean maybe you're sitting in a hot tub, but whatever would bring you happiness is what is available for you.
That's right.
Just as equally well.
The real world is a world you feel safe to be yourself, and you feel supported to be yourself and to do which is true to you, that makes you happy, and everyone around you loves that and supports you in that, and the universe supports you in that. That's the real world for you, and it's going to take whatever form that is for you. All right, so where we're at, Irene, is we are in chapter 30, section 6 in the complete and annotated edition, which is the purple covered edition, and section 5 of chapter 30 if you have the blue covered edition. Okay, that's where we're at. Chapter 30, section 6 in the annotated, 5 in the blue covered. All right. Okay, the cost of idols. Now we're going to talk about the real world. Okay, ready to hear about the real world? All right. Let's try something different for 2022. How about that? The real world is the state of mind. It's a state of mind in which the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness. That's the real world. A state of mind. A state of mind. Not a state of affairs, a state of mind, in which the only purpose of everything that happens is forgiveness.
Which is to see it a different way.
Exactly. which means the real world is a state of mind where fear is not the world's goal.
And let's notice at the beginning, it says that the purpose of the world. So we haven't transferred to the real world yet, but the purpose of this world as we've been experiencing it, the only purpose that it has is seeing it differently. We
Exactly.
need to see it differently.
Exactly. And when you say the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness, that means like the purpose of this relationship is forgiveness. The purpose of this event is forgiveness. The purpose of this experience that I'm having, forgiveness. The purpose of that is forgiveness. The purpose of every event, encounter, experience, relationship in the world, the real purpose of it is, how do I learn to see this with love? Love for me, love for them, release from guilt. How do I learn how to release myself and them and everything from guilt in this experience right now? That's giving the world the purpose of forgiveness.
So every one of these encounters and experiences and relationships, you could say, is for learning.
Exactly, it's for learning.
If we realize that that's what this encounter is, this as I'm coming into encounter with somebody else, a relationship, is that it's for learning.
It's for learning.
Then I'll realize what the purpose of it is.
And
I might be giving it a different purpose.
Yes.
Not for learning. I just want to do something else than learn.
Like guilt or fear or attack.
Which doesn't help with learning. It hampers learning.
And it certainly doesn't bring about the real world, which is the new improved world, by the way. When it says real world, think of the new and improved world.
The better world.
The better
By far.
world. The one you'll enjoy a lot more. In the real world, fear isn't the goal of anything that's happening. In the real world, the escape from guilt is the goal. How can I release myself from guilt? How can I release them from guilt? How can I release them from guilt? How can I release myself from guilt? How can I release them from guilt? How can I release myself from guilt? That's the purpose of the whole world and everything that's happening in the real world. And in the real world, the value of forgiveness is perceived, and forgiveness takes the place of idols. Idols which are sought no longer, because the so-called gifts of idols are not held dear in the real world. Okay? In the real world, I'm like, you know what? If I can see no guilt and release from guilt in here, that's going to give me everything I want. That has a lot of value. All the things I say I want, peace and love and joy and abundance and fun and meaning, that's only going to come to me as I release myself and everyone from guilt in this situation. The only real value here is forgiveness, the release from guilt. In the real world. In the real world, no rules are idly set. What does that mean? In the real world, the happy world, no demands are made of anyone or anything to twist and fit into my dream of fear. Wow. And that's what A Course in Miracles calls a special relationship. An ego relationship, a special relationship according to A Course in Miracles is like, here we are, a relationship, and like, hey baby, I would like you to twist and fit into my dream, my agenda, my script that came from my insecurity, that came from my fear. I would like for you to twist and fit into my dream of insecurity and fear. In other words, don't be yourself.
Okay.
But just be something that, even if you have to do like this,
I'm going
even
to.
if you have to twist and fit like it's not comfortable.
I'm going to do that.
Yes.
Only because I love you.
Exactly. Thank
And
you. You
because
must
you
really
love
love me.
me.
Yes.
I have a couple angles I'd like you to twist into.
Okay. All right. Deal?
Well, yeah.
I'll not be
Sounds
myself.
Sounds like a fair trade because I know it would make me happy.
Yeah.
I created
exactly.
me, so I know it makes me happy.
Exactly. And I'll not be myself so that you don't have to face your fear, and then you don't be yourself so I don't have to deal with my fear.
And
we have a
let's
deal.
call it a
And we'll
relationship.
call it love. Do we have a deal?
Because
Shake on it.
we'll know each other if we don't let each other be themselves.
Exactly.
And we could have a fake ass relationship.
In other words, a special relationship.
Special
and then we shake on it and we write a contract. Right, hon?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We shake on it, we write a contract, and then we call it love. And then we wonder why once we get into that relationship where we did even set a contract, where we made that agreement, why we still don't feel safe and happy. We both agreed we would twist and fit our real self into what they wanted us to be, but what their fear wanted us to be. We're like, all right, we made a deal, the deal of the century.
Yeah, I don't want you to do this certain thing because it triggers me.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't like it because, of course, the triggers are for me to learn something. I just don't like learning.
Exactly.
So rather than learning, I just feel right now I'd like to take a break. You know, between high school and college.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'll just take how
Yes.
some kids don't go on to college, they just take the break.
Mm-hmm. The gap year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And in the fake ass world, the unreal world, the world we've been living in, the relationships we've been in, the purpose is to get each other to feel guilty enough to twist and fit into our fear agenda, our fear script, the script we gave them out of our fear and insecurity. But in the real world, the goal is not, please take care of my fear. And in the real world, the goal is, please, I'm not get you to take care of my fear, but in the real world, our goal is to undo the fear and undo the guilt that make us want each other to twist and fit into our fear script.
You could say that fear is like, that fear is like for those of you that have ever smoked cigarettes, and that nicotine it's an addiction. And that fear has been an addiction that has, like any addiction, controlled us. Mm-hmm. For some of you, if you want to believe it, maybe for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. But for some of us, for decades.
Yes.
And for some of us, it's known as a pattern. Mm-hmm. And it made us, if you want to be a little frank tonight, it's a little bitch. And we can walk around. We can walk around, and I said one day in life about cigarettes that I'm not going to let it control me anymore. That's why I quit smoking. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I wasn't addicted to it anymore. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even because it made my breath smell bad or because I had dry mouth like crazy the next morning, or that it cost...
And you had those bags under your eyes.
Or it cost a second-time part-time job to afford them. None of those things. What it was is I hated so much the realization that it owned me, or at least that it thought it owned me. And in that realization, that alone was enough for me to, when I quit, I left a pack of cigarettes, a half pack next to my dresser for 6 months.
Right next to his bed.
Showing it who was whose bitch is the way I played that game.
Exactly.
And that's what the Course is trying to do with fear
thing.
with
And
us
guilt.
is like, why are you being fear's bitch?
Yes.
Why are you doing that? You have the power to to let that addiction go.
Yes.
But you have to want it. You have to want it in a way that you realize it has been controlling you. And you want to go to a different way, which the Course calls the real world.
A different kind of relationship, a different kind of world where you're not controlled by guilt. All of us know what it feels like to be in a relationship where we feel like we're being controlled by guilt. We all know what that feels like. And it's hell. But then it's like, oh, but this is love. We call it love, but it's really hell. You know, well, I'd be myself, but I feel guilty. Well, I'd go do that retreat, you know, but they'd give me guilt, so I'm not going to do it. You know, we all have been in relationships where we're allowing guilt to control us, and we're also using guilt to control them. Because we're telling them, hey, don't do that, it triggers my fear. And they go, oh, okay, I won't be myself, so you don't experience your fear, because I feel guilty, because I'm asking you to do the same thing. So we all know what it's like to be in relationships like that. And not only relationships, but we've all been living in a whole world where we're like, okay, I'll take this job because I feel guilty. Okay, I won't do this because I feel guilty. Oh, okay, I'll do this because I feel guilty. Or I won't do this because I feel guilty. And in the real world, guilt and fear is not the goal. And as a matter of fact, in the real world, the escape from guilt is the goal. In the real world, our relationships are about how can I release you from guilt? How can you release me from guilt? In the real world, it's all about what would I do if I wasn't feeling guilty? Well, let me do that. Let me be that. In the real world, it's all about what's it going to take for me to release them from guilt? What's it going to take for me to release myself from guilt so I can be myself? That's the goal of the real world. Release from guilt, forgiveness. Release from guilt, forgiveness.
And how do we get released? By releasing others.
Exactly.
Where are we at?
And we're here. It says, in the real world, there is the wish to understand all things created as they really are.
By God.
So in the real world, I'm not like trying to get you to twist and fit into my dream of fear. I'm going like, what are you? Oh, boy, you're beautiful. I'm not trying to get things to twist and fit into my dream of fear. I'm just asking, what are you? What are you? What are you? What are you? You know, in the real world, there's just the wish to understand all things created as they really are. And in the real world, it's recognized that all things must be first forgiven and then understood. In the real world, you understand that. You know, here in the fake-ass world, the ego world, the world of pain and guilt, we're like, first let me understand what you did, and then I'll forgive you. And he's saying in the real world, it's not like that. In the real world, first you forgive. You're innocent. I'm innocent. No guilt, no shame. Then you understand all things. Now you have wisdom. Now you see what's really going on. Now you know what's really going on. Before that, you thought you knew what was going on, but you did not know what was going on. Okay? It says, here in the ego world, it's thought that understanding is acquired by attack. I attack you, then I understand what's going on. But in the real world, it is clear that by attack is understanding lost. Total difference between ego world and real world.
Yeah, by the mere means of attacking, that in itself, an attack comes through us condemning,
Giving guilt.
giving guilt, judgment, and that's how we attack.
Yes.
And that's how we attack what's going on. What's going on is everything is happening for learning purposes, not just for me, but for my brothers and sisters,
Right.
my nieces and nephews,
Exactly.
my uncles and aunts, my
Everybody you
parents.
encounter.
Everybody, everywhere, wherever they're at, are in the perfect place at the level they're at to be learning what Creator would have them learn.
Exactly.
So when we're looking at them, and if they're calling for love, the last thing that we would need to do is to punish them.
Yes.
We would try to be helpful to the situation. So if we're attacking, then we're definitely demonstrating that we have no understanding. Understanding has been lost.
Yes. And maybe you think to yourself, I don't attack people. I'm a nice person. I don't attack people. I'm a nice person. I'm a nice girl. I'm a nice guy. But of course, in Miracles, it defined attack for us, and the way that we attack is exactly what it said. By demanding that other people twist and fit into our fear script.
Right.
And the way we attack people is we go, well, if you were different, I'd be happy. That's how we attack. It's another name for guilt. Guilt is when you say to people, well, if you were different, I'd be happy. If you were different, I'd be happy. I'm not happy because obviously what you're doing, that's an attack. That's giving guilt. That's the opposite of forgiveness. So do you see the difference between the two worlds here? We've got two worlds we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the end of paragraph 1. So now questions or comments. We read the paragraph, try to hear what it's saying, and then we open it up. Questions or comments?
Well, to me, when you attack, then you put yourself in a posture of defense. And your ability to understand or to have a vision for understanding and forgiveness is removed.
Exactly.
While you're attacking, because in attacking, you're defending something.
Exactly.
So if we stop attacking, it's the first step to being possible to open up to compassion and forgiveness.
Exactly. When we're attacking, we're not understanding what's really happening. Which is challenging because we believe that when we're most angry, that's when we most know what's going on. Oh, I understand what's happening here. When we're angry, we most think we know what's happening. And this is saying that when you're angry and you're demanding that somebody change for you to be happy, it's the most you don't know. You really, ultimately don't understand.
Yeah, you've lost all understanding.
You've lost all understanding.
And why the Course says when we're in that place that we're insane.
Yes.
That's what an insane person is somebody who's lost all understanding.
Exactly.
So when
That's
people,
right.
When somebody's at war,
yes.
in the attack mode,
Exactly.
all they're doing is killing and it's
Yes.
insanity. And then when they finally stop, they go, okay, let's make peace. Then they sit down and they go, okay, what's going on? Then they start to understand.
Exactly.
But
Then
not all the attackers have.
that's exactly right. Until they stop attacking and come to the table and aren't asking the other person to sacrifice their innocence where they could also be right, only then will we go, oh, now I see why they were defending. Oh, now I see what they were really needing. Beautiful. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for that. Any questions or comments, you guys? Hi, Carolina. Hi, Irene. Hi, Sarah. And thank you, Irene, for writing the chapter and the section. That was paragraph 1.
Yes.
Nobody puts more into a paragraph than A Course in Miracles does. The Course in Miracles is very holographic. You could take one sentence out of A Course in Miracles and study it for the rest of your life and get it all. It's very holographic like that. And the Course in Miracles itself says, don't rush through it. Go slow. Go slow. All right.
All right.
Okay, ready for paragraph 2?
Yes.
All right, you guys. The folly of pursuing guilt as goal is fully recognized in the real world. And in the real world, scripts are not wanted. Because in the real world, guilt is recognized as the sole cause of pain in any form. In the real world. In the real world, I don't want to receive guilt. I don't want to give guilt anymore. Yes, I'm an addict to guilt, giving and receiving, but I don't want to do it anymore. Yes, I have a habit. Yes, I'm an addict, but I don't want to be. I don't want to be a guilt addict. I don't want to be addicted to giving Greg guilt in the name of love. And I don't want to be an addict to accepting and receiving guilt from my partner in the real world. I may still have that temptation and that addiction, but I don't want it anymore. Just like an addict who's like, shoot, I'm an addict, but I don't want to be anymore. That's the real world.
And I love this sentence so much because week after week in A Course in Miracles, we're always trying to demonstrate and talk about how cause and effects work. Mm-hmm. And we just heard that guilt is recognized as the cause.
Soul cause.
It's the cause. Well, how did that pain happen? Mm-hmm. Well, I tripped and fell and bumped my head into the door. No, that was caused by guilt. Mm-hmm. The guilt was the cause of why you tripped and fell and bumped your head into the door.
That you
but
passed
the
a million
door
times.
had nothing to do with the pain. The trip had nothing to do with the pain. That toy in the hallway that made you trip had nothing to do with the pain, but you want to vent your anger thinking you know what happened, but now you're in a land of unknowingness. You don't know anything. You think that the lazy child that you told to put the skateboard away left it out, and that caused it, not realizing, no, it was that person at the office yesterday that I gave some guilt to, and this was the effect of that cause. And we're always blaming
The other person,
the
or
other
the door,
person,
or the toy you tripped
situation,
over.
or my bank account that
Yes.
just got overdrafted, thinking that the problem was over here. That's how magic tricks work in the ego land. When we don't realize, oh, if I can just figure out where it's coming from, then I can fix the problem.
Yes, exactly. Like the story you were telling today that after, practicing A Course in Miracles together one day, I was in the bathroom doing something, and Greg was in the bedroom, and Greg, is walking through the dark in the bedroom, and he slams his toe into the bed frame, the solid wood bed frame, and he goes, ah!
You know how you jam your toe into your foot?
And I said, what happened, honey? And Greg goes, I must have given somebody guilt. And I was like, I said, right on, baby. I said, good job. Right on. Because when does anybody do that? You get the pain and then you go, I must have judged. I must have given somebody guilt. He's saying that guilt, in the real world, you realize that guilt is the sole cause of pain in any form. I either gave guilt or I received guilt. I accepted guilt. Somebody gave me guilt and I said, oh, you're right, I'm so bad. I'm a bad person. Either way, you either gave it or you accepted it. Some days we give it, some days we accept it. Somebody gives us guilt and we go, yeah, God, I am a bad person.
As soon as you bite that apple, death, or you could say pain, will come in some form or another.
Exactly. So guilt is the metaphorical apple in the Garden of Eden. And isn't it interesting that what is our phones called? Apple. The Apple phone. I always thought that was very interesting. But guilt is the proverbial apple. As soon as you bite that apple, I'm naked. I'm guilty. Who's to blame? Now you're no longer in heaven. Now you're no longer in the garden of abundance. You're out. And you're going to blame it on
guilt.
Yeah, you're going to blame it on the snake. You're going to blame it on the one who tempted you with guilt.
Okay, read the next sentence on what you just said.
It says, in the real world, in the happy world, in the abundant, safe world, no one is tempted by guilt's vain appeal. Exactly, like in the Garden of Eden. The snake comes, ooh, look at this beautiful, shiny apple of guilt. It's so juicy. Don't you want it?
And it will protect you.
And it will taste great. And it will protect you. You know you want it. Okay? In the real world, we go, no, thank you. No, thank you. No.
I've thrown up before.
No, thank you.
I
I
know what
know.
it feels like.
I thank you. I know. No, I know what comes from biting that apple. It's sweet for a moment, and then pain, 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 pain. In the real world, you're not even tempted by guilt's vain appeal, because in the real world, suffering and death have been seen as things you don't want, which means things you don't want to strive for.
No longer we're going to strive in our relationship any longer, baby.
For guilt.
For death and for pain. You agree?
And death, which is the same as guilt.
Right.
It used to be in our past, in the old world, we were striving for guilt and suffering, pain and death, but not realizing it. You know, in the old world, in the previous ego world, we were hot for guilt. We were hot to give each other guilt. We were hot, you know, to accept the guilt that other people were giving us in the name of love. In the real world, we're not tempted by guilt. Now when somebody offers me guilt, I don't think, oh, they must love me. I go, they don't love me right now. That's in the real world. You realize, no, that's not love. They're not loving me right now. Maybe they were earlier when they weren't giving me guilt, but they're not loving me right now. That's not love. In the real world, you know that love doesn't give you guilt. Love doesn't demand that you twist and fit into its dream of guilt. In the real world, you know that. And you go, no, thank you. That's what you say in the real world. All right, it says, in the real world, the possibility of freedom from guilt and fear has been grasped and welcomed, and the means by which the freedom from guilt and fear can be gained can now be understood. In the real world. That's what's going on in the real world. Oh, if I just don't give or receive guilt, I could be free from pain and suffering and lack. Oh, I could be actually free from all the stuff that seems to limit me. Oh, I've grasped it. Didn't say I've accepted it fully. It says I've grasped it and I've at least welcomed it.
And grasping could be said also to understand it.
Exactly.
When you're giving guilt, you're now in a mindset that you can't understand.
Yes.
But when you're not giving guilt in the real world, then we're told the possibility, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the possibility of freedom has been grasped or has been understood.
Yes.
And now welcomed.
Yes, exactly. Like the Course in Miracles says in one of the workbook lessons, forgiveness is the key to happiness, and forgiveness gives me everything I want. It says, what do you really want? You know, forgiveness offers you freedom, peace, release from guilt, abundance, no stress, no strain. You know, you get, forgiveness really does offer me everything I want. Forgiveness really is the key to freedom. Freedom from pain, freedom from limitation. And in the real world, you're grasping it. You may not have fully accepted it. In the real world, you haven't yet fully accepted it, but you've grasped it. You see the logic of it. You see the truth of it. No, like Greg and I, we have seen the truth of that, but we haven't fully accepted it yet. But we do know it's true, and we are striving for that. Even though some days we still have that old addiction to guilt that we were programmed with since birth for maybe lifetimes. You know, so we still have that old temptation, but at least we have seen and grasped the truth that releasing each other from guilt will offer us what we really want, the real world. Now, then it says, and then the world becomes a place of hope.
Right.
Yes.
It says that we can grasp it in the the means by which it can be gained.
Yes.
So that we have to remember the means to get there. I notice for myself a lot, and of course it talks about, you know, how everything's working out great and wonderful, but and the means, we have to keep remembering by what those means are, which is, like you said, the forgiveness. And as you were talking, I was hearing the release of guilt, which isn't just I'm releasing you, but I'm releasing what God made and trusting that what God made and everything that's happening is good.
And that's the means
Right.
by which we're able to understand freedom.
Right. The means is my trust in God's creation.
Yes, exactly.
And that God's creation can't be
Guilty.
sinful,
Yes.
blemished, wrong,
Yes.
not right, not
Yes.
beautiful and correct as it is.
Yes. Yeah, the ego world, in the ego world, the currency is guilt.
Right.
And in the special relationship, the currency is guilt, and we're exchanging guilt, and we're bargaining with guilt, and we're compromising with guilt.
That's the way you survive in the ego world,
Exactly.
right?
That's the way you survive in the ego world, and that's the way you just survive in an ego relationship. Is you're just exchanging the currency of guilt. I make you feel guilty today, and then next day you make me feel guilty, and now you'll sacrifice your freedom and innocence, you know, for me, and then tomorrow you're going to do it for me. You're going to give up some of your freedom for me tomorrow.
And
That's the currency.
And the paper they make to make that currency is fear.
Yes.
So they put that paper into the guilt machine. It's printed out in all of its abundance, and we get to look at it and go,
Yep.
that's horrible.
Exactly. But when you've given your relationships and the world the purpose of release from guilt, and now you're not trying to get the world and people to twist and fit into your dream of fear and guilt, now you experience the world as a place of hope instead of a place of despair where you're like, God, this place is just, it's hopeless. This place is hopeless. That's where we're tempted to feel sometimes when we look at the world. This place is just effed up. It is hopeless. And this is saying, this shows you a world that's full of hope. Like, dang, this is good. It says, because the world's only purpose now in the real world is to be a place where hope of happiness can be fulfilled in the real world. And in the real world, nobody stands outside innocence. Nobody stands outside this hope, because the world has been united in belief. The purpose of the world is one in which all must share if hope be more than just a dream in the real world.
And the more I read this, the more I keep hearing that repetitive message of no exceptions. And no one stands outside this hope. So if I'm in this place where I'm holding a grievance against anyone or any situation, then I'm standing in not the real world.
And we're believing something stands outside that truth.
Right. That something that is within creation could be set outside of being worthy of love.
Yes.
And abundance and everything being right with it.
Exactly. In the real world, we know that there's nothing that happens, no one or nothing that happens that is an exception to the there is no sin truth. In the real world, we know there's no exception to there is no sin fact. That's what we know in the real world. Okay. And that was paragraph 2. All right. Questions or comments? How does it feel to hear these thoughts?
Came up to me to see the two playgrounds. I could either play in the playground that I'm familiar with my upbringing, you know, dissing on you and cutting you down, or gossiping, or I could play in the playground now of offering, releasing you from guilt, and also hearing your call for love. Yeah.
Yes.
That's important for me
Yes.
here. To
2
remember that-
playgrounds.
Yeah, that I can extend love and hear your call for love, and not again try to put guilt on you for whatever you're complaining about.
Yes.
In one playground, you're apt to get dragged by the merry-go-round around and around and around. And the other one, you'll be on the merry-go-round, but you'll be laughing and having fun.
Exactly.
Thank you.
It reminds me of when I was a little kid and, playing, doing make-believe, dress up, with my friends and going, you're going to be the mommy, I'm going to be the daddy, this is what's going to be happening. And then my friend goes, I don't want to be the mommy. And I'm like, no, you're going to be the mommy. And then we fight.
Yeah.
I remember those days. I don't want to be the mommy. Well, I don't want to be the mommy. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
It reminds me of an experience I had a few days ago. A guy that I know, and he was saying things that were just like super inappropriate, and it was clearly, whether you realize it or not, was designed to engage in some sort of back and forth. And I decided I wasn't going to play the game. I said, you know what? You're loved and you're really wanted here. And he just did not know what to do with it. And I meant it.
Wow.
I wanted to like dissolve this thing that was coming out of him, and he was trying to figure out what was. It was just like, I'm not buying into this, and it was guilt trip. He was wanting to get into a back and forth guilty kind of thing, and it didn't happen.
Yes.
And he's just, it was a really beautiful way to get out of that, and offer something. And I feel like this is what this is talking about for me.
There's a perfect example of that. There's a perfect example. He wanted to give guilt and receive guilt.
Yeah.
And instead of you falling for it, you saw that he was wanting to give guilt and receive guilt because he didn't feel worthy of love.
It was the way he wanted love, was through conflict or suppression.
Exactly.
So feeling like, he wanted to be guilty about the thing he just said.
Yes.
And I said, I'm not going to buy into that.
Yes. That's beautiful. So you released him from guilt?
I think you demonstrated that last line that was read beautifully, that the purpose of this world is one in which must share. You were sharing something of the real world. If hope be more than just a dream, you're showing them that peace can be more than just a dream, something that we just fantasize about. The demonstration of peace just showed up before him. And now it's more than just a dream, but now it's in his court. Does he want to accept that gift or not? And you made it available for him. You could have gave him what he already had. Some more attack, some more hate, some more fear.
Some more guilt.
But you offered something totally different than what's been offered before, and that's the function of the miracle worker.
You answered his deeper call for help.
love. Yeah.
Because initially I was like, that's inappropriate. You shouldn't say that.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute. I'm going where this is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it almost sounds like also that you didn't personalize it. You obviously did it at some level, but rather than that be the overwhelming power, the power that came out was answering a call for love, answering somebody's need to hear something that they needed to hear.
Yes. In that moment, you saw that the sole cause of his pain was the guilt he was feeling or giving. And you saw that that was his pain. And so, instead of giving guilt back, you actually answered it and said, you're loved, you're wanted.
And I have to say this, a few lessons back ago, we were hearing that there is in this world what we would refer to as a karmic law, the laws of karma. And the only way you can break that law, the Course tells us, is through forgiveness. So this brother that you had the confrontation, that could have been confrontational, they were planting something that they were going to receive back now, even if you just didn't say nothing and ignored it. they were going to receive something back now that they planted. But the Course teaches is when you exercise forgiveness, you break the chain for them. So now they're not going to get what they had planted, which was some more illness, heartache, or as the Form
Suffering.
says, pain in any form.
Pain in any form.
You broke it.
Exactly.
And that's what the job of a Samurai warrior of truth does, is they see what the child is doing to hurt themselves, and they pull their hand back from the electrical plug and go, ah! And that's recognizing and having understanding. The other way, you don't have understanding. You grab their hand and help them put it in the plug. You go, yeah! Yeah! So beautiful job.
Yeah, good job.
Good job
It's
on
a
you.
perfect example.
For both of you.
Yeah,
Thank you for helping me understand
yeah.
a bit more about what happened.
Isn't it nice when we hear people say, good job, you know,
Yeah.
when we
Oh,
get
yeah.
feedback like, you did right, you did good.
Oh, yeah.
Normally we only hear like what we did wrong.
Or well, next time you might
Yeah,
want
do
to.
this. Instead of, right on, good
Yeah,
job.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely. Awesome. Anything else? Any other thoughts, questions, comments? And you guys who are watching, don't hesitate to share your feedback or ask questions. Well, how do I apply it to this? How do I apply it to that? So, anything else, you guys? Okay? All right, don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Okay, now we're on paragraph 3. It says, in the real world, heaven isn't quite remembered yet. Because in the real world, the purpose of forgiveness still remains as a purpose. In the real world, forgiveness is still a purpose. That's my goal.
In heaven, where our final destination is, forgiveness isn't even
Just a goal.
It's not even a
It's
thing.
not even a
it
goal.
can't even be a thing.
Because it's done.
Yeah, there's no learning more to
Yes.
do. There's no achievement to acquire.
Exactly. Forgiveness has been accomplished, right? Here in the real world, it's like, forgiveness is my goal. Forgiveness is my goal. Release from guilt is my goal.
In
Okay?
heaven, it can't even be imagined
Yeah.
that everything isn't seen as beautiful.
In heaven or reality, you know that nothing needs forgiveness.
Nothing needs
Nothing.
to be fixed.
Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be forgiven. In reality, heaven is reality. In heaven, you know nothing needs to be forgiven. It's already been completely forgiven. Nothing was broken. Nothing ever became guilty.
And when we were in the hot tub, we were talking about, you would think, why don't we just go from the ego world to heaven? Why are we stopping at, why can't we just have a direct flight? What's this stopover? What's this stopover?
In the real world.
We're doing in planet forgiveness. Why are we stopping there? Why can't we just go straight to heaven? I don't
rally.
want to wait. And it's like, no, because you can't take that baggage with you.
Yes.
Heaven isn't a place of grief and anguish and the need to let pain go. Heaven doesn't have anything to do with any of that.
You can't get into heaven or reality with guilt and grievances. You can't get in. You know, the metal detector, it goes and it goes and it kicks you out. Can't get,
Right.
sorry. You can't get into the portal, you can't get into the ark of peace with any guilt or grievances, no matter how valid you think they are. You can't get into heaven, which means reality, with them. And so Spirit's like, okay, that's fine. I'll give you the real world where you every day can practice giving up the guilt, letting go of the guilt. Every day you can practice until you can go, okay, there is no sin. Nobody's guilty. I'm not guilty. They're not guilty. Yeah, we can make mistakes, but don't mean we're guilty. And then now you can enter the ark of peace. So that's what thank you for asking that question. How come we can't just go from ego hell into reality, into heaven? You had to have a, borderland. The Course calls it a borderland, a healing ground. Okay, and the Course in Miracles says if you went straight from ego hell straight into heaven, you would be so freaked out, you would freak the F out. You would, he says if you were exposed to reality while you're still full of anger, guilt, and grievances,
that you wouldn't even go.
you would think, he says you would have too much fear. You would be too shocking. You'd have too much fear. And he said, so he goes, so we don't do that. We give you the real world where each and every day you can practice letting go of a little more guilt, letting go of a little more guilt, letting go of a little more guilt, called forgiveness. You know, so thanks for asking that. Okay, so in the real world, you haven't quite remembered heaven because the purpose of releasing from guilt still remains a goal. Yet, in the real world, everyone is certain that they will go beyond forgiveness. And in the real world, everybody knows that they're staying in the real world until their forgiveness is made perfect in themselves. That's what people know in the real world. That's what you know. I know I'm only staying here until forgiveness is perfect in myself. I know that.
Which is when I can see, with no exceptions,
Mm-hmm.
no one is left outside of the real world.
Yes.
That's when I stand at the gate ready to enter heaven.
Yes.
When I've made no exceptions, then I have been made, as it says here, perfect in myself. I won't become perfect in myself as long as there's anyone yet left behind.
And
If
from
any-
my forgiveness.
Yeah, from my not wanting to condemn or judge, give guilt to,
Right. Exactly.
or want, as it said, to fit into that funny shape that
Yeah.
that you wanted to make me into.
Exactly. I know that I'm staying here in the real world until my forgiveness is made complete, where I'm not wanting anybody to fit and twist into my script, my fear script, my guilt script. I need you to be like this to take care of my fear. You know? So in the real world, we know that we'll stay only as long as we still have forgiveness exceptions. And who is the hardest person to forgive? Who is that?
Well, in reality, it's myself, but it
Exactly.
is the people we're in close relationship
Exactly.
with.
It's our special relationships. The people that it's hardest to release from that demand that they fit and twist into our dream of fear called love is the people that we are closest with, that we say we love. Everybody else, we're pretty good about, oh, whatever, I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do. But it's the people that we're closest to that it's the hardest to release them from the demand of guilt, the demand of sacrifice. So, in the real world, we have no wish for anything but that our forgiveness will be made perfect at last. That's our only wish. And in the real world, our fear has dropped away because now we're united in our purpose with ourself. In the real world, now we only have one goal, not two. In the ego world, I had two goals, okay? Release from guilt, and I need you to feel guilty for me. I had two goals. In the ego world, in my past, I had two goals. In the real world, I have only one goal. Who, regardless of the situation, regardless of the relationship.
Or you could say in the old world I had two goals, which was for you to feel guilty, or for me to feel guilty, or for even the situation to be guilty. My job be guilty.
Yes,
My car be guilty.
exactly.
Where I'm living be guilty. And the Course here naturally is telling us that when all fear has dropped away, fear could be the same as guilt.
It
when,
is.
when all guilt has dropped away because it was united in purpose with himself.
Yeah.
And what's that purpose that it's united in is the same purpose that Creator has. There is no guilt.
Release from guilt.
And you
Forgiveness.
and you can see why that's such a big transfer, because when we say there is no guilt, a million yeah buts come up. War buts, murder buts,
Yeah, but.
sickness buts.
Special relationship, yeah, buts. What do you mean there is no sin and guilt? If I release this person from guilt, I can't release my special partner from guilt.
Do you know what they did?
Do you know what they would do?
Would you like me to remind you?
Yeah. Yes, I've got their ex on the line, and they'll tell you what they will do if you release them from guilt.
This isn't an opinion. I have records and
We have
photos
pictures.
and witnesses.
Yes, exactly. It's
And
called
they
called
admitted-
Facebook.
And they admitted themselves.
Yes.
They've confessed.
Yes. But in the real world, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're my special partner, my child, my parent, my boss. I don't care. My one purpose is release from guilt, forgiveness. I release you from guilt. I release myself from guilt, forgiveness. That's my only one goal for every situation, every relationship, no exceptions. That's my goal. Now, in the real world, I'm not going to accomplish that perfectly because remember, forgiveness is still a goal in the real world. I'm still practicing, but at least I have the goal. You know, Greg and I are not perfect in releasing each other and ourselves from guilt, but at least we have the goal. And that's a big improvement. That's a humongous improvement. And so, yeah, we're not perfect, but at least we have the goal, and that goal will take us into heaven, to reality. You know, Greg's and my part was just to agree on the goal, even if we hadn't accomplished it, and even if we haven't accomplished it yet ourselves. That was our only part. We agree on the goal, which is Spirit's goal, and then Spirit takes care of the rest. I'll take you from here. You know, God takes the final step. You know, we can't take that final step. All we can do is go, we agree that the purpose of our relationship is release from guilt. We have no idea what that means. We have no idea how to do it. We're not good at it. But at least we have that goal. And Spirit says, that's all you need to have. I'll do the rest from here. Isn't that great?
That's great.
Because we don't know how to release ourselves and everybody and everything from guilt. We don't. But all we have to do is have the goal. And then the holy relationship, A Course in Miracles says, is where two people agree that that's their goal and they join on that goal, even though they have no idea how to do it. That's what takes the relationship from special to holy. Okay, beautiful. Irene says, to twist and fit into the dream of fear we call love. Our only goal is to release guilt and sacrifice. Exactly. Hi, Carmen. Okay, great. Everybody take a breath. Don't forget to breathe. The ego would love to have you pass out right about now. What happened to her? She's listening to the Course and she didn't breathe.
I gotta release everybody from guilt.
And when the Course in Miracles says nothing is left out of your goal of release from guilt, what do you think is the first thing that comes up in your mind? All the exceptions you want to make. Yeah, but what the that guy is guilty. That girl is guilty. You know, all the exceptions, all the yes buts come up. You know.
I want to finish this paragraph, but I also want to share. We often talk, the reason you came to the Course is because it worked.
Yes,
She found
exactly.
that it worked.
That's it.
And at this one junction in my walk and my path in the Course, I had already been sold on the Course application of it working, but I was still at a place, I'm going to say 2 years into the Course, that I had an exception. But I was willing to not think about it, try to not think about it. I didn't dwell on it. But in the back of my mind, I had a story that I knew that if anybody had experienced this story the same way as I experienced it, that God himself
Couldn't forgive it.
would know that this was a guilty story.
Yeah, that it can't be forgiven.
And I didn't know how to process that really with the Course, but I did know I was right. I did know that these people were guilty.
They couldn't be forgiven.
And the shame and the incidents of what had happened, I could have interviewed quite confidently. I would bet my whole bank account on it. If I told 100 people the story, 100 of them would agree with me.
That it couldn't be forgiven.
That the people are guilty. And in the topic of a conversation, another way of seeing this story that I've held on to for quite a few years came to me through the dialogue of a conversation that allowed me to see the story from a perspective that I had never would have been able to look at it before, because I wasn't even looking in that direction. I was only looking in the direction of guilt.
It can't be forgiven.
And guilt was the only evidence I was allowing into my courtroom. And knowing that I could have not just 12 but 100 jurors, and I am so confident in the verdict. And I was given a different verdict because I was shown a different way to see it. And the reason I'm bringing this up right now is I really believe Spirit was telling me somebody at this junction of the broadcast or at this moment is thinking there are things that I can't forgive, that I can't say is not guilty. And what this one story did for me was it demonstrated it was my top idol story.
It was the top idol story.
There wasn't even a second place in my opinion. It won the race of all guilt stories. And it was so, as I used to call it, it traumatized me.
It was trauma. It was
It
traumatic. It really was traumatic.
Very traumatic.
Yes, it was traumatic.
And the triggers it would set off in my life were, boy, you want to talk about characters like Mr. Evil and Dr. Jekyll and split personalities. But the point of it is when you have an experience with the applications of the Course and you see my biggest idol, the Course literally took it and put it in its palm, and then not upset with me or nothing, understood how I could feel the way I feel. If that's the only evidence that I'm going to allow, then yeah, of course you'd feel that way.
Of course you'd be traumatized by that.
Of course you'd be hurt. Of course you'd have pain. But just smiled and showed me another way of looking at it, and that twinkling of an eye of realizing, oh, that's really what happened. Then literally, instantaneously, I went from hate, upset, grief, sorrow, anguish,
Hate.
real deep-rooted bitterness, and years of it from its repetition in my spirit. And in that fast, like a miracle does, a miracle is
Fast.
stand and arise and walk. And in that moment, I realized forever now in A Course in Miracles, I've never had anything any remotely close happen in my life since that story. But I can go back to that story and go, if Creator can blow that story away in the breath of Creator's laughter, then what story could it not blow away?
Exactly.
And that's what the Course does, is it gives you faith every time it takes one of your stories and rereads it from you, for you. Says, let me read the story to you. Then it becomes more easy. Even when I can't understand in the moment, I don't see how I can forgive this, how I can see this as loving, how I can see this as helpful,
Yes.
how I can see this as good.
Yes.
I'll just trust now because my higher loving self has done it before. Why should I doubt my partner now, that they would let me down, that they wouldn't be there for me in this moment of need?
And your partner being spirit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's too where the turning point where I went from a student of A Course in Miracles to
All in.
this is what I'm going to do for my whole life, was that point where I was on the ground devastated, believing that this is something I couldn't forgive and I couldn't survive. And even though I was pretty darn sure that I couldn't forgive this and maybe even couldn't survive it, I still listened to what A Course in Miracles said, and I still did what it said to do. And then not only did I survive it, but I went from devastation to literally another world, where I was like, oh my God, who knew this was possible? And that I said, if A Course in Miracles can do that, it can do anything. And I dedicated my whole life to the study and the teaching of it. So it wasn't because of how beautiful the words are. It was because I saw, just like Greg was saying, we both saw that the very thing that we thought we could not survive or could not forgive was like, boop, nothing. The truth blew on it like that, and it was gone. And that's when we knew that A Course in Miracles was the real deal power, the real deal truth. You know, not because of the pretty words, but because how it absolutely did for us the so-called impossible. And then we were like, okay, if it can do that, then it can do anything. So, and that's when we both dedicated our lives to it. All right. I'll just finish this paragraph and then we'll begin the closing of this session. Okay? So we are in the annotated, it's paragraph 3, and it says, in the real world, the hope of happiness in us is so sure and so constant that we can barely stay in the real world and wait a little longer with our feet still touching the earth. That's what you're gonna feel like in the real world. It's so good, it's so happy, it's so free, it's so fun, it's so safe, it's so innocent that your feet are barely touching the ground. That's what it's like in the real world, you know, and you can barely stay a little bit longer in the real world. Yet, here you are in the real world, yet you're glad to wait here in the real world till every hand is joined, which means every heart made ready to arise and go with you beyond forgiveness to reality, to heaven. Because by staying a little bit longer and waiting in the real world until every hand is joined and every heart is ready to be released from guilt, that's how you're made ready to go from the real world to reality, the step in which all forgiveness is left behind. You're like, woo, forgiveness was awesome, but there's something even better. You know, you go to a world where nothing needs to be forgiven. You totally left forgiveness behind. You're not like, oh, I need to forgive this, I need to forgive that, and I can't forgive this, and I can't forgive that. You totally left forgiveness behind. You know, and now you're in reality, heaven, where instead of like healing and forgiving and working on it and processing and working on it and working on it and forgiving, now all you're doing is creating the good, the beautiful, and the holy. You ever feel some days like, I'm just tired of always working on this and working on that and working on this and working on that and working on this? Well, when you get to the beyond the real world, you're not working on anything. You're just creating the good, the beautiful, and the holy. What am I going to create today that's awesome? Beautiful. Exactly. You're just creating out of the awareness that you're whole and complete and guiltless and eternal and you're not a body and there is no loss. And you're having a good time and creating from that state of mind. Instead of like, you know, always working on, you know, the guilt and the fear and working processing. All right. So,
I want to say this real quick. You were reading that not until every hand is joined.
mm-hmm.
I can't see it right now, but it goes on to talk about that the gap that was between us was that perceived guilt. It says that gap was never there. But somewhere down the line of this section, if you continue reading on, in the next paragraph or so, it says that when you go to take the hand of your brother, in other words, you're trying to release this concept of something's wrong, they need to change to fit into my
Fear script.
That you're not, when you release that guilt and you let them be the way they are, which you're so certain is gonna just totally
Be bad.
be the worst thing
Oh,
ever
yeah.
if I don't control the situation.
With guilt.
But it says later on here that we just read it, not until everybody has taken each other's hand, but it says later that we would be taking the hand of our higher loving self. So we're not really trusting our brother and sister when we're trying to release this guilt. We're taking the hand of our Creator, not of them. We're trusting Creator. We're not trusting them anymore that if I let them do whatever they're gonna do, then how is that gonna keep me safe? We're trusting that they can do whatever they wanna do, and Creator, no matter what they do, doesn't make that dependent on my safety, on me not experiencing a joyous life. It's not dependent on them anymore. I'm not their slave anymore for them to act accordingly for my happiness. I have now put my hand into the hands of heaven. At least that's my aim. And heaven takes my hand in that action and backs it up and shows that your confidence will be rewarded. If you don't see it now, in due time, you'll see that taking my hand, heaven's hand, was a worthy choice.
Yes.
And whatever it was you were fearing, like in your case, you might end up saying, boy, I dodged a bullet on that one. I'm happy that did happen.
Exactly. Yeah, if you release somebody from guilt and they run away from you, then soon enough, if you don't give yourself or them guilt, you'll realize that you were saved. Spared. And you'll be like, oh my God, I dodged a bullet. Because now they're in jail for what they did to their next partner. And they're on the evening news. Like, woo, if I had given that person guilt, I would still been in a relationship with that person. Or in that situation, in that job, or whatever.
Because they would have temporarily changed the way I wanted them to.
Exactly. So, we've talked about the ego world and the real world, which is on the way to heaven or reality. And we heard about how to be in the real world. Let's say you're in the ego world, but you'd rather be in the ego world. We heard exactly how to move from the ego world or the past into the real world, which is a big improvement. You know, your forgiveness isn't perfect, but boy, oh boy, that's your goal, and you're having a good time. Even just having forgiveness as a goal, your life becomes more fun and joyous and abundant and free than you ever dreamed to be possible. And that was just with forgiveness as a goal. You know, what's it like when you actually forgave?
Would you read these two sentences, 3 and 4?
Yes. It says, when you're in the real world, let's just say in paragraph 6, when we join in the purpose of forgiveness in the world of fear, then we stand already at the edge of the real world. And here in the real world, where now we've joined in the purpose of forgiveness, perhaps we're still looking back into the past world and think we see some guilt we want. Yet, has our path been surely set away from idols of guilt toward reality, because when we joined in the purpose of releasing from guilt, when we joined our hands, it was really Christ's hand, our true self's hand, that we took. That's what you were saying.
Yeah, and we will look on.
And we will look on Christ, our true self.
Christ is a word symbol for innocence.
Yes, we will look on whose hand we hold.
Not on them.
Yes, exactly. So,
I feel like we're running through a maze from here to there. And it says that we stand on the edge of the real world.
yes,
And again, we encourage you to go on to read, but it talks about entering into heaven. The real world is just the place where we're running through, releasing guilt, releasing guilt, releasing guilt.
it's the preparation.
And sometimes we want to take
Place.
longer to get into the edge, or you could say the finish line, or you could say the spot where God takes the final step for us. And we want to take longer, so we stay in this desert place, just staring at one grievance for longer, instead of finally now dealing with it. We don't want to deal with it. We want to change characters. We want to ignore it.
Substitutions.
Yes.
You know, the special relationship is our past relationship where we get together and we go, okay, here's how I need you to make me happy based on my past pain. Are you going to do that?
This is the ego world.
Yes, this is
the first world.
This is the ego world, and also the ego relationship, special relationship. And you say, of course, baby, I love you.
And we all do
I'll
that.
do that.
And agree and
And
realize
then
it
he
doesn't
says to
end up
me,
being fun.
exactly, are you gonna change for me to be happy? You know, to fit into my pain script that came from my past pain. And I say, of course, baby, I'll do that for you. Okay, and then we have a relationship where we are now giving each other guilt. You said that you would. Well, you said you would. Well, you said you would. And you said you change, and you're not changing good enough. Well, you're not changing good enough.
So we're trusting God. No, we're trusting each other.
Exactly, and that's a relationship that the goal is guilt, and we call it love. And then we came to A Course in Miracles, and we heard in the Course in Miracles, we heard Spirit say, well, how about you take my purpose for y'all being together? How about you let my purpose for y'all's relationship replace your old purpose for being together? And we said, okay, having no idea what we were doing.
And you usually only say okay when you're really sick and tired of the repetitive results
Yes.
you've been getting in life before.
In your relationships. And so then Spirit goes, great. My purpose for your relationship is that your goal for being together is that y'all would demonstrate and teach each other that there is no sin and release each other from guilt. And we're like, what kind of relationship goal is that? We're like, no, that kind of relationship goal is that. If I release my partner from guilt, they'll do whatever they want to do. And I won't be happy.
And isn't that going to be scary?
Yeah, they won't make me happy and I'll be unhappy. And so Spirit's like, just trust me on this one. I mean, come on, what's your track record, Anna and Greg? And we're like, our track record, not so good. So, okay, well then just humor me and try out mine, you know. If you don't like what my goal for your relationship does, then go back to your old goal.
And the truth is, it won't make you more scared. We're already scared.
Exactly. Really scared.
Holy Spirit's trying to get us released from our scared.
Yes. And so Holy Spirit's like, okay, great. Your new goal for being together is how can you release each other and yourselves from guilt today? Okay. And it doesn't seem romantic, does it? It seems so unromantic, right? But the truth is that because that's Spirit's goal for us being together, that is the goal that will enable Greg and I to go from a pain relationship that just gives it, where we just trade pain back and forth. Now it's your day to feel pain. No, now it's your day to feel pain. to a relationship where our lives and our relationship gets happier and happier and happier and more fun and more abundant and more joyous and more beautiful and more fun and more abundant, to the point where we go, is this okay?
And it's really the opposite of what ego wants to convince you would happen if you do this.
Yes.
If you give your partner freedom,
From guilt.
yes, and we're talking about, it's easy to use a relationship as an example, but we're always repeating, your partner could be your boss at work.
That's right.
Or your employee.
Your
at work.
kid, your mom,
kid,
your
your
dad, your neighbor.
And so this is an application where no one is left outside the city wall.
Yes.
Everyone comes in, or if anybody is excluded, I'm excluded with them. It's an all for all type of plan.
It's all or nothing forgiveness. But in the real world, we know we're working toward that all forgiveness. And once it's all forgiveness for everyone all the time, your forgiveness has extended to cover everyone and everything, no exceptions, not even the special ones, then you go beyond forgiveness to reality, to heaven.
Yes.
Yes.
And it starts with just like Anna and I can practice the principles in our relationship. What an easy playground for it. And I try to remind myself when I'm in a grievance with her, well, this is a lesson that I'm supposed to learn. And do I want to learn it with this character in my dream, in this real world, but not heaven yet? Or do I want to get a different character? But I need to learn the lesson. You don't like this character?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
You can get rid of them.
Exactly.
But another one will come along because you have to learn the lesson.
Exactly.
So I like the character I'm with, and I'm like, well, okay.
At
I'll
least
go ahead and learn it with this.
At
one.
least I have the goal of forgiveness and release from guilt.
Yeah, and that's why I like this character
If you
a lot.
substitute me and replace me, you might go back to one of the other characters who didn't
Right.
have the goal of forgiveness.
And when I say I like this character, I know for some of us that would go into the image of a body form. But it truly is, and I'm not just saying it, when you're dialed into a course, you're liking the character because, more so because they are practicing the same purpose.
They have the same goal.
And so that is a rarity of rarities. A rare jewel is when one of the few answer the call. When you have too few answering the call, and this is what I'm learning lately is, just like a few of the people we had over here this weekend, they weren't Course Miracle students, but they were students of truth. And when we opened up ideas and discussions, we understood because we shared the same principles of this idea of releasing each other from guilt and letting each other be themselves. And so within those walls we can work with each other.
And while that was going on, we kept saying to ourselves, this feels like the real world. Or we kept saying, oh, another ordinary day in the real world. We were experiencing a glimpse, a taste of the real world. And there was no drama, no conflict, no pain for the whole weekend, which is pretty amazing when there's more than two people,
Yeah.
you know. So the real world. So you guys down for the real world? And have you had enough of the old world, the pain world, the lack world?
2022.
Yes.
Stepping into the new.
That's right. 2022. Let's do something new. All right. So it's a little bit after 7:30. So how about we just do a minute of a closing integration meditation where we just breathe and feel and hear the words and practice. All right. Okay, you guys. So, integration meditation, take a breath. Okay.
I just want to say a couple words, Irene, by demonstration.
Demonstration. Exactly.
That's how you communicate this to somebody that does not have the same goal.
Exactly. And by your demonstration, they'll want that goal.
Or they will, you won't have to do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
I won't say what they will do.
All right, so taking a breath, just breathing, feeling into the moment. At the eve of this new year, at the dawning of the new year that is before us, let's remember that what we really want is to experience and step into the real world, a new world where the one goal for everything and every relationship and every encounter every day is forgiveness, release from guilt. And so now I want you to bring to your awareness a situation or a relationship in your life where you have been experiencing difficulty, conflict, not an ever-increasing joy. And I want you to bring that relationship or that situation into your awareness. And now I want you to decide that now you only want this relationship or situation for one goal, one reason, and one purpose alone, and that is to learn how to forgive. How to release them from guilt, how to release you from guilt, how to release others from guilt, how to release yourself from guilt. Set a new goal, accept a new goal that you didn't create.
Practice, practice, practice.
Set a new goal, accept Spirit's goal for this relationship, for this situation. Decide that the only thing you want to learn, the only thing you want to be accomplished in this situation or relationship is the practice of forgiveness, releasing from guilt. And take a breath. This is how we do it. And I want you to say to this person or this situation in your mind's eye, say their name and say their name and say, I release you from the demand that you twist and fit into my fear script. I release you from the demand of sacrifice in this holy instant right now. I did not create you. You are not the source of my happiness. Your behavior is not the source of my happiness. But releasing you from guilt is the source of my happiness. I release you from any and all demand that you twist and fit into my fear script. I release you from the demand of sacrifice. And I say to this person, you are innocent. Be yourself. I did not create you. You are as innocent as love created you. We are the same. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. And then breathe, bring your awareness back into the quiet, peaceful center of your being, and notice how you feel having practiced forgiveness with this person or this situation. Notice how that feels. then let us ask our higher self, Spirit, please help me to remember to do that more often. This is my goal. And now let's decide that for this new year that is being birthed and born from the old year, that our goal and our purpose for this new year is forgiveness for everyone, everything, every situation, every event, every relationship, every day. The purpose of this new year is forgiveness.
Forgiveness is the release of guilt.
Yourself and them.
When we have released everything from guilt, then we have done our part. That's our part. We need not worry about
anything else.
Anything else. Try to analyze it, intellectualize it, as to how is that going to fix it, what we think, by the way, needs to be fixed.
And say to yourself, with loving conviction, forgiveness is the key to my happiness. Forgiveness offers me everything I want.
Release from guilt offers me everything that I want. It releases me from all pain in every form.
And forgiveness is my ticket into the real world. Forgiveness is my ticket onto the ark of peace, which can only be entered 2 by 2. And take a breath. Beautiful. And when you're ready, open your eyes and bring your awareness back. Beautiful. Good job, guys. Right on. Thank you for coming out here to help us learn this. Thank you guys for using your very precious time and space to join this healing circle. Beautiful. We appreciate you guys so much. We appreciate you so much. And thanks for helping us to learn the lesson of forgiveness. Thank you. We need it. We love you guys.
Thank you.
Hi, Jean.